The God's honest truth. Mark Carney is Adolf Hitler. For all intents and purposes, what we're seeing today, this video, I've spent a number of hours today going through a lot of material to organize my thoughts, to give this presentation, that anybody can pick up a device, do the research on the terms, the rollout, the history, as it really is, that I can't make up. I can only read it, absorb it, and present it as it is, as it was, and as it's going to be today, what trajectory we're on right here in Canada. There's a lot to unpack about the United States. Many fallacies, many fallacies, throwing America under the bus. When Germany did that, and they're called jurists, I want people to understand a very important word. The word jurist. When I go into this video and we talk about expertise in legality, it's with jurists. These are defined people who are experts in law, hands down. Any law you're looking at, those are the jurists brought forward. When I talk about Nuremberg trials, Nuremberg results from Germany, they're from jurists, experts in law, the creation of law, how it was at the time, what the claims were, what was made as people were put to death. I want Americans to understand something. You have to understand that during the Nuremberg trials, and we're dealing with Germany and the fallout, of course, when America is the victorious ally, you've lost the war, you've committed mass amounts of atrocities, genocide, a genocide unbelievable, unimaginable level and scale, and the person who's going to fix judgment upon you is the United States of America. What is your best line of defense? When you're being questioned, you're going to take everything that you were taught about America to throw in America's face. You're going to do that. You're going to answer their questions, go through hoping you don't get put to death for the crimes of genocide on a massive scale. You're going to grab every single sin of America and you're going to throw it in your prosecutor's face so that they will go easier on you, because how can they go so hard on you when they're participating in some of these things in their history too? But when we unpack it, folks, is it America? Was it America's sins that Nazi Germany, like so many scholars like to claim from all over Europe, a mass majority against the United States of America? This video I call God's honest truth. Mark Carney is Adolf Hitler. We're going to unpack all of that history as it was done, what really was Nazi Germany's usages from other colonial states around the world, not America. And then, along with this word jurist, I want people, when we're talking about expert in law, I want everybody to understand something. When you're at war, there's military law. Doesn't matter. This is universal. I wrote an Oxford paper about this. Very well received by all the allies of World War II. Well, maybe not all. UK and France certainly didn't like that paper. In fact, they created a cartoon, the UK specifically, on the nature of international law. Complete propaganda, mass-produced, overtook my viewership and overtook my paper that sat number one for many years. An Oxford paper, I might add. And it was funny, I overtook many scholars all around the world when it came to international law, the nature of it as it really is. And I overtook many doctorates of law on that paper until, of course, UK publishes a dumbed down cartoon going into basically their international law. And of course, people like pictures and cartoons, and it overtook me in viewership. Not from the academic world, it overtook viewership from people programmed in the system, which UK is very good at doing. They're the best in the entire world. In fact, most of their colonial models created in the Commonwealth are good too. This video is going to go through absolutely Markham, Unionville, the two Chinese, well, their identities, their DNA is Chinese, but where they come from in China and India, in fact. We're going to go through both those candidates, what they are, where they come from, and what loyalties they really have. Nothing to do with communist China. Big surprise, right? We're going to get into why both of them are lockstep loyal to Mark Carney, Lord of the Treasury, Lord of the UK, England, London Treasury, a high standing with one King Charles III, as were both candidates, Ma and Chang, from UK's world, Commonwealth. Both of these people, both highly decorated in CSIS. Oh yeah, oh yeah. All from London, England. They're high society Chinese, deathly against absolutely that of communist China. We're going to get into all of that. We're going to get into UNDRIP. A lot of people have wanted me to unpack that for some time, and I'm going to show you UNDRIP C15 2021, as you all know it, Agenda 2021, and then the nationalization, Mark Carney's budget, Bill C15, the nationalization of Canada forevermore, that can only be attributed to one source, 1933's Enabling Act. Oh yeah, I've unpacked all of that too, chasing Section 12 of C15 to that. You're seeing the national piece of shit go off. People are sharing that to me. Other people sharing that Michael Ma was somehow unfettered by Pierre Poilievre because Pierre Poilievre doesn't have military and police security clearance. And that is problematic, but CSIS has both Ma and Chang in high military and police security clearance. Why? Because he was already vetted, both of them, by London, England. Mark Carney, Lord of the Treasury, London, England, high standing with Charles III, nationalizing everything exactly like Adolf Hitler. People are saying, oh, we see the French come forward, we see Yves Blanchet from Bloc Québécois saying, oh, this looks like a corporate strategy. No, it's Crown. And Mark Carney and all Prime Ministers of Canada have always had kingly power through the Governor-General of Canada, who has the power of head of state, controls absolutely the entire judicial branch of Canada, entire legislative branch of Canada, and of course is appointed by Prime Minister, a defined role that Prime Minister can terminate any time, appointed unilaterally by Prime Minister, who doesn't have a defined definition in the Constitutional Acts of Canada, 1867 to 1982. None of the premiers do. To find that, you have to go back to Louis XIII over New France, which is Quebec. Yeah. And that was the establishment of the office of Prime Minister and that of Premier. And then in the 7-Year War with France and Britain, the spoils reward, a Germanic King George III won that war, made Quebec British Quebec, took those two titles and enshrined them forevermore in what would be coming the Dominion of Canada, the country of Canada. It would define the British North American Acts. It would be the enshrining of Prime Minister and Premier forevermore worldwide. It was born right here in Canada, what is Canada, and it was everything that America, the 13 colonies, were having a revolution against the British Empire over. And you can even watch the documentary. You'll see all the German military hired, of course, through King George III, who was Germanic, folks. Yeah, he spoke German, Latin, and French, had not a good grasp of English. What happened from there on out with Canada is the socialism and fascism forevermore in the British colonial model. It would be the jewel, the finest craftsmanship of fascism and socialism the world's ever seen. Folks, there is no earlier document in a non-war period, meaning not rules of war. We're talking about regular human beings in a country, in a place. The Indian Act 1876 is the original. There is no such document in the United States of America. In fact, all of it came much later after the rollout of Canada's system, the Indian Act 1876. First recorded model, expressly drafted legislation, all to kill the Indian, remove the Indian problem. All of everything Hitler narrates post-1933 from his Enabling Act, all of that over the Jews in all terminology comes from Canada, comes from 1909, South Africa. After that delegation in the constitutional monarchy, South Africa, created after Canada in the British system as what? A colony of UK, English Empire, British Empire, after the model of Canada. What year? 1867, with the 1876 Indian Act. 1909, the constitutional monarchy under the British Empire, second creation with an Indian Act, created the what? The Native Act of South Africa, 1909. You start reading it, it is word for word the Indian Act. They don't even change the name of blacks there. They call them the indigenous natives. They call them the Indians of South Africa. That's right. That's right. The Indian problem. How to terminate that Indian problem. They enshrined the schools. From that point on, they created concentration camps. Who in non-war time, Canadians, this is before World War II, all the way through, who created the first concentration camps in non-war with non-at-war subjects? Who did that? Your Canadian government did. The first model worldwide, again, in non-war time. Not at war with Ukrainians, not at war with Poles. World War I was a war against Germany. So why did they put these people in concentration camps and force labor upon them in non-military combat? War Measures Act Canada rolled it all out. That's what South Africa took, and that's what the Nazi Germans took identically as they put that over the Jews, because they exterminated the Jews. They put the Jews in concentration camps. You will not find that in America's system for the Indians or for the African Americans in apartheid of segregation, United States of America, that they learned from who? Canada's model, much older and much after the Civil War. United States rolled into that. Everybody in the world learned from Canada's model. There is no earlier model in non-war time. Canada was never at war with the First Peoples. They were not. There are numbered treaties that come in lockstep with the Dominion of Canada. No war with the Indians. They made treaties off the Indian Act. Go look at the numbered treaties. They had named treaties before that, and then they imposed the Indian Act on all of them in non-war time. That's how they brought settlers here. Do you understand the difference? Germany did not declare war on the Jewish people. They did not. This wasn't a model the Germans claimed to America, who had American Indian wars and American wars throughout history with many nations, where under wartime war acts of the military, they created labor camps and put people to work, like all countries of the world do. Not people you're not at war with, and then you genocide them on mass scale. Folks, if you don't know, I'm going to teach you about the American Indian and the equivalent American Indian people, who are all the same people in North America. I'm going to put Russia on the shelf. I'm only going to compare in this analysis American Indians, Canadian First Peoples, through all that history. Folks, today there are 6 times the amount of American Indians than there are Canadian First Peoples, the same peoples. American Indian Wars, Canada in treaty with the Indian Act, and everything leading up to that from 1848 onward. You have a population of 250,000 American Indians in the United States. You have 125,000 Canadian First Peoples. Okay? America, much, much higher population, blowing Canada in that period out of the water, 10 times the population. And do you know what the results were in residential school all the way up to one date, 1948? Deaths of America Indian children with double the population, 900 and some people put in, upwards to 1972 in America, probably 3,000. Let's just take that number. But again, we have some key dates here. In America, 10 times the population, twice as many American Indians. Canada, 125,000. Population doesn't grow very good at all. And in fact, the death rates of Canadian Indian children is 4 times higher with 10 times less the population than that of the United States. And we hit a key date that blows all Canadian governments, all provincial governments out of the water. And it's an important day. It's after World War II. We have new human rights laws. America completely changes. You watch the rapid escalation, especially after 1975, of Indian population in the United States, growing at a rate 6 times that of Canada's. And do you know what you witness from 1948 onward, when these things are not to be in the world? You watch Canada's death stats don't change for any of the residential school children. In fact, they're just as high as they ever were. And they start going radically beyond the United States. And you know what the claim by the Canadian government? Never mind all graves, all of that. And I don't mean to minimize First Peoples here, okay? But I throw it away because I don't care. It's not that I don't care about First Peoples and what they went through. It's because I've got a better statistic for everybody, as do Americans, in the crime of genocide, okay? 1948, the cure for tuberculosis is now available. Mass-produced by 1952, which is a key date because the government of Canada destroys, terminates arbitrarily a US-UK treaty called the Jay Treaty. The free movement of American Indians to Canada, that territory, and Canadian First Peoples to their counterpart American Indians. USA does not remove that law because in 1924, contrary to the testimony of the Nazi jurists, America created the American Indian citizen. And in the 30s, they give American Indians much more. They have 6 laws, in fact, all the way up to 1975, giving sovereignty to the American Indian people. Equal people in the country. Canada doesn't have any of that. They have class structure subjugation and a savage class defined still today under the Indian Act. They are not entitled to any sovereignty or any powers of what a nation would get as a state of the Union or a province in Canada, bestowed upon the Premier. Not the same again for America. American Indians got all that a long time ago. They even gave them the right to write constitutions in 1930. 4 years before the enabling act of Nazi Germany. Okay, everybody? And the fallout of that. So the Nazis did not use the American model. It's impossible. They were trying to save their skins by pointing at America and blaming America, because America was the one who was going to put them all to death. And they did. They did. Thousands of Germans were put to death for crimes against humanity. Now, 1952, this Canada terminates the Jay Treaty. None of those filthy American Indians will dare step foot over our boundaries. This is the Canadian government, not the UK. This is the Canadian government. And by the way, at this time, South Africa is way on in its South Africa Indian Act, known as the South Africa Act, created absolutely undeniably by Canada's Indian Act. They're word for word the same. They even use the same problem narratives. They even call them out. It's the same terminology Adolf Hitler used in the Enabling Act over the Jews. Exact same terminology. First crafted in 1910 in Canada, absolutely used and forevermore enshrined in South Africa, where all the Nazi jurists in Nuremberg trials testifying absolutely roll out South Africa as their template. South Africa's template absolutely is rolled out from Canada's Indian Act. End of story. Now, 1952, the absolute mass production for the cure for tuberculosis is available in all of Canada, all of the United States. Do you know what happens in America's limited residential schools, where they did mandate for 70 years that all American Indian children had to go, just like all Canadian Indian children had to go for well over 100 and some years, okay? 107, I believe. And you watch from 1952 the tuberculosis claim death rates of Canadian Indian residential school children, 24% death rate, is all attributed to tuberculosis. Nothing to see here, no mass graves. We had to burn the bodies. That's what's in writing. That's what's claimed by the provincial and federal government and 3 church groups, United, Catholic, and absolutely Anglican, run schools. And we're all transferred at different times. First it was a federal school, then Catholic, then United, then back to territorial government or a provincial government, then to the federal government. Oh yeah. And it's all in different orders. They all participated, even moved those graves. Why would you be moving graves? Why would you even document that? Unless, of course, you know you committed a crime, but you had the safety of, well, they died of tuberculosis. We had to burn the bodies, put these unmarked graves there because we can't have that disease, right? It's disease. But the problem is, all the American residential school children are not dying after 1952 at any remotely close rate in tuberculosis to any of those residential school children in Canada. Because it's absolutely genocide. They weren't giving them the cure, and in fact they were infecting them on purpose, and they were raping, murdering, and destroying them. And the best thing to do after you raped and beat a child or tore their vagina up as a full-grown man, or a nun stabbing crucifixes into a child's vagina or anus, and then they bleed out, or you beat them so bad in a brutal gang rape by men or participatory women, you have to get rid of the bodies, right? So you incinerate them, and you just write it up as tuberculosis. Now, Canada thought they got away with it. America knows this absolutely to be true. Every expert in the United States has gone through this. They're Canadian experts. Regardless of all the rest of it, Canadians, your government can't escape that. Is it your fault? No, it's your government's fault. Federally, provincially, and territorially, they all participated. And there's still these sons of bitches alive today, like Jean Chrétien. And you know what? Even Governor General Mary Simon, who's probably the worst, Malcolm X called these the House Negro in a 1960 speech to the grassroots when he returned from Mecca, enlightened about what America really was and why it was so important and why he wanted to drop the whole idea of black Americans, foundational Americans separate from white Americans, is he learned the truth of the Islamist state and the evil of it, church under state. And he knew it was all a fraud and what they were trying to recreate in America to corrupt America. And he came back with a changed tune. Kumbaya, bring everybody together, gave the speech to the grassroots, and no sooner was he shot dead, machine gun style mass murder attempt on him. There was no way he was walking away from that stage. He was crucified, murdered, because he was highlighting the crown evil of a very socialist and fascist system that overtook many churches, many big religions, Catholicism. I apologize, everybody, but looks like my charge wasn't, so I didn't have my phone plugged in properly. So I'm going to have to do that. Like my hair? Oh boy, too kid. But folks, all this is true. Now I want to get from that, I want to move on, because America has been thrown under the bus over this. Americans take a lot in this world that they don't need to. All the colonials are all guilty. Germany established an empire in Africa. All of that was learned off of UK, France, Portugal, Spain, no different than other Denmark, Netherlands, lots. There's 9 kingdoms. There's even of the Islam world. When we look at the former Ottoman Empire, the current divided 2 empires, they're still there, still monarchies, the birth of the Islamist state. What happened to Israel, church under state as it is today? These are undeniable absolute truths created by monarchials, as was Germany. Germany got everything from its fellow colonials, not America. America's been imperial at times, never colonial. When they destroyed the Spanish Empire, they did get Spanish assets as fast as they got them, as fast as the American system and its constitution ended all that. Same with residential schools. It ended all that. It couldn't survive in the American model, just like segregation couldn't. And then there was a Civil War, and America changed. For any notion post the American Civil War that America wasn't weeding all that out, and that somehow Germany was using America's model, is cockamamie. When a live and real model, far outpacing the genocide of anything arguable of America during wartime, under war, laws of war, rules of war, that all countries know very well and their top jurists. Canada was creating all of this in its regular system, with regular folks not at war. Cultural genocide. And that's what Hitler used. Hitler wasn't at war with the Jews. He used all of that, crafted and created first in Canada, imparted on its fellow next jewel, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand went through it. Again, all after Canada's first model, London, England, Canada One Tower. The triangle, the pyramid with the jewel on the top. That's Canada. It's prized socialist and fascist creation. The model the entire world's used over. The model under UNDRIP, Agenda 2021, to fool First Nations, never giving them anything, never giving them land, turning the Indian agents, the chief system, into official crown positions in the hierarchy of the crown. That's what UNDRIP did, not for any Indian peoples. No land bestowed upon them. Only money the crown harvests from their slaves is bestowed upon those chiefs. Not for our First Peoples, all reserve peoples in Canada, do not see but a fraction, a welfare check of that money. Some have seen some payouts for crimes that they've liquidated from Canadian subjects. Now remember, that was Bill C-15, the promise of all this wealth for First Nations and reserve expansions. Then the TRC, all these recommendations, we're going to do it all. But yet out of the 93 recommendations, none of which have really been implemented. And what does Mark Carney do? Becomes Prime Minister, Lord of the Treasury of Canada, Lord of the Treasury of London, England, implements a new bill, just passed in majority, thanks to Green Party Elizabeth May, who doesn't care anything about the environment or First Peoples. She's the biggest hypocrite and liar, maybe next to Mary Simon, Governor General of Canada. They work, all these people, to enshrine the Nazified power of Mark Carney. She does as Governor General. Now, the Führer was once Chancellor, Adolf Hitler. Through the Enabling Act, he consolidated the equivalent office of Prime Minister of Canada and Governor General of Canada into one position called Führer. That's what Adolf Hitler did. He learned Canada's model through South Africa, went for Chancellor, overtook the system, consolidated them into one Emperor office, as was Emperor Edward VII of the UK. If you don't understand this, you should go look at your history. He's on a giant horse statue. He's right in Toronto, the biggest, best statue of Toronto's legislature. You can go look at it. Provincial legislature, most celebrated statue, Emperor Edward VII. That's the equivalent of Führer. And Edward VII over India and Pakistan, where all opium was done, and of course Hong Kong too. It's brutal. There were empresses too. That's where Adolf Hitler got it from. South Africa, the model history of UK, and absolutely the first model of Canada. It's undeniable. In all the words, in all the legislation, you can't find any of this legislation in America, even when people say, but the Jim Crow laws. Again, those don't match it at all. That's just the Nazis saying that to save their necks, hoping America will go, well, we're bad too, we won't execute you. They executed them anyway. And Americans have left that on the table because that's world narrative from mass amounts of other empires, a majority of UN states who used to have the old world order where they did this in the millions in genocide. Millions. Look at South America. Look at North American Indians before the 13 colonies. Look at the mass genocide up to and enduring. Look where slavery comes from. America didn't birth slavery. That was inherited. That was part and parcel of their system. It was those southern states with the Spanish that had to be removed through civil war because they were constituted that way from the Spanish Empire system that was UK and France too. Portugal and many others. They were all doing it. America inherited that. They had to fight that evil, and they did. They saved all the First Peoples too, who grew at a population rate 6 times that of Canada. And you certainly don't see the residential school genocide. Now, I hit Agenda 2021 on drip. Now today, 2025, a new C-15. This is how the Adolf Hitler Mark Carney operates. He creates a new C-15 bill for the nationalization of Canada, where now none of the laws of Canada and the Constitution can be inhibited. Only the criminal code, which is bound and sworn to Governor General on the advice and consent of Prime Minister. And all justices of the Supreme and every Superior Court will rule on criminal code matters according to what Mark Carney tells them in conjunction with what Mary Simon allows them to do. Yay or nay. If they don't like it, they'll just terminate them. So, realistically, Adolf Hitler lives in 2 titles in Canada. Mark Carney and Mary Simon. And they're doing that. With Section 12 of the new C-15 that passed for the budget, all Canadian laws, including the constitutional acts of Canada, can be put aside, including UNDRIP C-15 has been undone. All they promised to those greedy chiefs has been undone with the new C-15 override, Section 12. They don't need any consultation, and they can abuse them as much as they want, liquidate them. They can take as much private property from all Canadian subjects they want that stands in the way of them and their elite friends from all over the colonial world who want to take away your private property, and they'll do it in the name of UNDRIP, in the name of these Indians who will not see any land or any real profits from anything. Only Crown sworn loyal Indians, Mary Simon Deans, who've been loyal to Mark Carney and his regime, and the conservative regimes, and the NDP regimes who are loyal. Hence we got Chang and we got Ma, which brings me to the last piece of this. Folks, when we look at Chang and Ma, one's from Hong Kong, an actor for the UK for the absolute 100-year occupation of Hong Kong from the Chinese. He's been an agent for the UK in propaganda against the Chinese Communist Party. The other comes from Pakistan, from the British Empire, a cop trained and taught in the British Empire. Both of these folks are raised and trained and central to the key areas of fentanyl and opium crisis in the world today. The two largest sources in the world, these two conservative, liberal, or whatever you want to call them, UK loyalists from London, England, strong ties, absolutely vetted by the Crown of England, Keeley found in CSIS, accepted by CSIS, from where? London, England, King Charles III himself. Mark Carney's two loyal, placed in Markham, Unionville, the place that all the Germans from the American Revolutionary War, 1776, post that and America's success, came back fearful because loyalists were killed in America, set up shop in Markham County, then known as Unionville, and built what they thought in 1812 would be the War of Independence. They built an American state there. They built that. They built that, and were waiting for the day, and they fought for American Liberation War of 1812, and they lost. They abandoned Unionville. They all fled to New York. They raised out their lives there, were accepted as Americans. Unionville sat, and it's been compromised by the UK Crown to destroy all of that history of the GTA that stands vibrant and bright even today. I've been there just this last year. It's changing fast. First under Chang, now Ma, but they're changing it. They're destroying all of those American buildings and in place putting in Chinese buildings, Italian buildings. It doesn't matter, Japanese buildings. They're destroying that American Unionville. They're wiping it from Canadian history books because I've already taught you about the US-UK treaties, like Canada did over the Jay Treaty in 1952, finishing in 1956 to complete the genocide of Indian children in Canada to reduce the population of Canadian First Peoples. Again, the birth rates post that are 6 times in America than they are in Canada. That's genocide, folks. Doesn't matter what you show me. Myself, mass amount of American scholars, and many jurists around the world know this to be true. It's even found in AI now. It's overriding the Oxford lies of Canada, of the Crown of UK, of France, of Spain, Portugal, trying to hide these lies. The 9 elites that run the old world order, trying to corrupt you. You'll find Ma and Chang. Do you know how Ma was indoctrinated in Pakistan? Diversity, equity, inclusion. That was born in Pakistan. It was done by London, UK. He was instrumental in that. Now he takes over for Chang. Didn't matter which one it was going to be. They were all going to be the same. And under Mark Carney, there's going to be more floor crossers, more British loyalists, more haters of America. It's time to take Canada, in the UK mind, to take Canada, enrich all of their aspirations, the 9 kingdoms, and destroy America. Keep the Great Wall of Canada up, strong, replace the bricks, Destroy America, war on America. This is truth, Canadians. Undeniable truth. You can easily find on AI. Keywords, key dates I've told you. You will find AI will liberate you on this. If the platform you use for AI didn't know it before, they will when you teach them to research it. And they'll go, wow, that's a huge parallel. Yeah, I read the document. It doesn't read like these American documents. It most certainly reads like South Africa's document that reads identically to Canada's document, the first one ever created. Canada has always been a crown colonial system based entirely in socialism and fascism. It's the creation of it in the world. Look at our tax rates here in Canada. Look at every other nation that's adopted our model off of our laws, again, that are still implemented today, 2025. The Indian Act has gone nowhere. The First Peoples are still segregated. They're still on a minute amount of land, never allowed any self-government, self-determination, or anything that exists for many, many decades in the United States. Works the United States has been doing with the American Indian peoples for well over 105 years, and they've been getting them to constitute themselves, working with them. They have massive land claims. 0.335% of Canada's for First Peoples. What do you see, Canadians, as you are losing your private property in the name of First Peoples who aren't able to occupy that property? It goes back to the Crown. The Crown's expanding its Crown lands. It's expanding its ownership over slaves. Slaves, that's what a subject is. That's what the very, very Adolf Hitler-style Mark Carney is. If you ever want to know the truth of it, C-15, Nationalization Budget Laws, Section 12, where he removes all legal authority of all Canadian laws over all his projects and everything he's going to do out of that budget. The most detrimental thing ever done in Canadian history since the inception of the Indian Act, 1876. Folks, it's undeniable. It's C-15 over C-15. How Canadians don't see this, I don't know. Americans clearly see it. They're biding their time. Talk is coming of military intervention. I think America sees that if the Canadians can't wake up, they can't remove these kind of tyrants, and this UK evil that largely only exists in Canada as a template for the rest of the world, and it enriches UK elites amongst other Nine Kingdom elites who actually own vast swaths of Canadian land in old world order titles, customary law, where your resources, your water, is owned by foreign corporations and entities on old treaties from old Quebec, old Canada, upper and lower, under the British North American system, using laws not enshrined in our Constitution. Canadians, you've got to wake up. Hitler's here. He's always been here. Hitler isn't the first, and he won't be the last. Mark Carney is Hitler. He's not the first in Canada. He's not the last, but he may very well be the worst we've ever seen, far outpacing Justin Trudeau. And now that they all know, and they're in such a panic, their crimes against Canadian people and First Peoples will be epic in proportion going forward. Folks, this is my video, undeniable. Do the right thing. This is the God's honest truth. Mark Carney is Adolf Hitler. They always were, long before Adolf Hitler, and they're going to be long after Adolf Hitler, as long as we allow this constitutional monarchical system in its laws to continue. In customary and constitutional law, we, the people of Canada, need to end it. And we need help, we really do. And it may come to military intervention if we can't wake enough people up. Share, get this epic video out there. All true, all easily researched, all by all of you. Use your devices. You will find the truth. And when AI is convoluted or in error, bring up South Africa. Bring up South Africa Act 1909. These dates are key because they far outpace the United States They predate the United States. Canada predates the United States in these laws and in this genocide. That's my video. God bless. Sure. Get it out there. Bye now.